Arcade Heroes.
Get ready!
Greetings, it's Adam with Arcade Heroes, and we've got an interesting little game that's been on test over in Japan to discuss today, although my cursor was in the wrong place here, so sorry about that. But Magi Blast, I guess, is how you might pronounce it, is a game that has been developed by a Japanese company called Historia, who I believe did JoJo's Bizarre Adventure, the arcade version, and they've done several other games before. So they're not somebody who just popped up out of nowhere, and we've never heard before. Although, as far as a game company, they wouldn't be super well known, I would say. But they're actually working with Bandai Namco Amusements Japan to develop this brand new arcade, sort of like gun shooter, you could call it, but it was posted on X, I think last week, that this game would be on test in Tokyo, and since it was a public test where they like to do that over there, I mean, if you're new to the arcade industry, one thing to know that is a little bit strange, or might seem strange, is that in Japan they do both secret tests as well as these public, widely publicized location tests. Location test would be the arcade equivalent of, say, a beta test, but putting it out onto a location, testing it out, see what player reactions are to it, see if there's any problems that happen with people actually interacting with the game, all of that stuff. It's an important element of arcade game development, and of course, because things like this show up in the public square, particularly nowadays where everybody has a cell phone or a smartphone to take pictures of whatever it might be, these tend to get a little bit more attention than they might have way back in the day, back in the, say, 70s or 80s, where they still did do these sorts of things, hold these tests. But like I said, in Japan, it's common for them to do secretive tests where nobody knows about it and the developer's just collecting data on it. But then they'll do these publicized tests, build up hype for the game, and get maybe some more generalized feedback instead of specialized. Whereas in the United States, it's almost always the rule that all tests are secretive. And there's probably a few out there that'll see this and be shaking their fists at me, or not happy. I know there's been some people not happy with me for publicizing location tests here on certain games, and but it's always a challenge to figure out. It's like, I do want to respect the desires and wishes of the game developers, but at the same time, when something's put in public, it's going to get out there. It's impossible for it not to. But I guess part of the complaint is that I'm giving it a signal boost, whereas otherwise it might just stay on X or stay on Reddit. But there are some games that do spread around a lot when they get talked about, and I want to not just talk about them, not trying to chase clout or whatever. I'm just trying to get the news out about it, and I also want to get the most accurate information possible out there about the game. And to that end, on this one, because it is being handled or produced by Bandai Namco, like Historia will be creating the software, Bandai Namco will be creating the hardware. I have talked to someone at Bandai Namco about this, but so far there isn't anything to comment on as to whether or not this will show up in the West, aka Europe and North America. Now, I could see where this doesn't show up, just because it does seem highly unusual as far as shooting games go, but also shooting style games always seem to have their place. And as I just posted on my for Arcade Heroes members, that the different earnings on stuff, my light gun games, are always holding up pretty well. Of course, for the past long while, Maximum Tune 5 by Bandai Namco Amusements has been my #1 game. But oftentimes, or like this past month, for the top 3, it was Maximum Tune 5 was #1, then Jurassic Park Arcade by Raw Thrills, then Walking Dead by Raw Thrills. And so even though this has an unusual controller, as you've been seeing here, which I'll get to in a second, depending on how the gameplay goes, if it's not one of those overly complex games that would frighten away most players here in the States, then it could be a good fit to go. But as you might have also deduced from the name Magiblast, is that this is dealing with magic. And so you're some sort of wizard or witch, perhaps, and you're casting spells at your enemies, and so you're using those. And so they created a fantasy RPG-ish kind of light gun game. And that, again, we'll get into a second into the magical. I mean, I guess I've seen the translation come out as wand, but I also think of wand as something, like in Harry Potter, something small that fits into one hand. This looks more like a wizard's staff. But from this image here, it has the how-to where there's 3 different buttons on it for casting what might be 3 different types of spells. If I were to take a wild guess, which I'm going to be doing a lot of here, you have water spells, fire spells, and electrical spells. But maybe I'm completely wrong, and maybe it's blueberries, strawberries, and lemons. I don't know. But so what you do is you have all these creatures, fantasy creatures attacking you, and you use your spells to deal massive amounts of damage to them. Now this also apparently does have a card feature to it, which I guess in just now I'm suddenly realizing that this looks like a spell book that's been opened up on the control panel, which is very nice, clever, like the hexagonal designs for the buttons, as that's just a little bit different. But I don't see necessarily where there is a card dispenser. I mean, this seems like a typical coin slot on the front. I mean, there's this basket here. I don't know if that would be for cards or something. But, of course, it could just be digital cards or it's in-game cards. Say maybe they're taking a page from Magic the Gathering, and like you earn these in-game cards to change spells. That's probably what it could be, unless they are flirting with the idea of doing some sort of card vending thing, which wouldn't be the first time that Namco's done it. I mean, there's Animal Kaiser Plus that's out there right now, not just in Asia but also in the West, and doing very well over in Britain. But let's talk about these controllers, because that's since we don't really have a lot of gameplay to look at yet, the controllers are where people are putting most of their focus. But for that, we're going to jump over to X, where we can see these in action as they've been posted. And so what this is, in case it's not apparent, is these are using those spinning LED pseudo-holographic displays. And you've probably seen these before. They've been out there, used in businesses to draw attention to things. I've seen them used in arcade machines before, but more as just like a marquee enhancement, but nothing that's ever been actually integrated into the gameplay like this. Now, of course, anytime you point a camera at these things, you can see the flicker of the spinning pieces and whatnot. When it's in person, everything's solid and looks great. And of course, there are different qualities as to how these fans might work. I've seen some where the image quality is kind of trashy and the frame rate on it's real crap. From what I can tell here, it looks like it's probably on the higher end, the smoother ones. But that's what the purpose of the casing is around that, to protect that so you don't get people sticking their hand into it. But also where it's clear, should, imagine, make it so that it's not getting in the way of your view of the screen. But still, that's an interesting effect. And let's see if we got another video here that shows, this one I believe shows the attract mode. I did see one other video that shows that a lot of the time the whole image of all this arcane, mystical stuff and writing disappears, and it'll show like a target reticle in certain areas to maybe indicate where to aim or shoot, something like that. But let's take a look at this one. Actually, this is a longer one, more detail. So here you can see all those enemies. Okay, I guess the blue one is ice. Water still, technically, just another form of water. Also looks like you can aim where the effect of your spells will go in addition to firing off things like fireballs. That this would be a much more advanced version of the type of gameplay that you would encounter in something like Iceman, where you have just waves of enemies coming at you, and you're not necessarily moving through something like a labyrinth or a building, but that you're just, say, looks like you're just on an open battlefield and tons of enemies coming at you in waves and boss battles and all that. So, okay, found it here. And so, see, as you can see there, you have the okay, so it's the targeting reticles on the screen itself, but that the LEDs will change depending on what certain effects, or what certain spells perhaps that you're using. But looks pretty cool. And this also does tie into a video that I just did where I'm talking about augmented reality and mixed reality. This one, it's one of those areas where it's hard to define. Is it augmented or is it mixed? I guess we could say mixed in a way, even though it's not projection mapping, which is what I usually use in terms of mixed. But, you know, it's not wearable. It's finding a way to integrate holograms of some kind into the gameplay, and a clever way at doing it. I mean, sure, it looks a little strange at first, but it definitely fits in with the theme of the gameplay, you know, using spells and all that stuff. So definitely looking forward to seeing more about this game. I would love to see this getting tested out in the States. And, I mean, never say never. I mean, Taiko no Tatsuji's out now. It was just revealed that the Gundam Extreme Versus Boost, or I forget exactly what the name is, but it's one of the most popular video arcade games in Japan, has popped up in New York City at the new Bandai Namco Cross store that opened there. And it'd be very interesting to see if that gets wider spread coverage. But yeah, there's at least a good chance that this gets some testing here. Whether or not it would pass testing, we don't know. But let me know what you think about this one in the comments below if you want to see this pop up in arcades, and we'll catch you on the next video.